The Springfield 3 Part 2, The First Leads. In Part 1, we went back to the morning of June 7th, 1992. A morning when three women, Cheryl Levitt, Suzanne Streeter, and Stacy McCall, disappeared from a home in Springfield, Missouri. No one knew exactly when they had left. No one knew where they had gone, and there was almost nothing that could explain what had happened to them. But as investigators began looking deeper, strange details started to emerge. Details that would make the case even more difficult to understand. A house that didn't look like a crime scene. When family members and friends entered the house, something immediately felt wrong. The home had not been obviously ransacked. There was no major sign of a struggle. No blood. No bodies. And the women's belongings were still there. Their cars were outside. Personal belongings were inside. And even the family dog was still at the house. According to the FBI, Suzanne and Stacy had returned to Cheryl's home after attending graduation celebrations. At some point between approximately 2:15 in the morning and 7:30 in the morning, all three women disappeared. Only 5 hours and 15 minutes. 5 hours and 15 minutes for three people to vanish without leaving a clear trail. But there was something else. Something investigators noticed at the house. The glass cover of the porch light was broken. The bulb itself was still working. By itself, that proves nothing. But it raises a question. Why was it broken? Had something happened outside the house? Had someone been standing near the door? Or was it simply an unrelated accident? Even today, there is no definitive answer. The small details. When investigators examine a disappearance, sometimes the smallest details become the most important. Inside Suzanne's bedroom, the television was still on. The screen was showing static. Nearby, an open soft drink was left behind. Cigarettes belonging to Cheryl and Suzanne were also still inside the house. For people who knew Cheryl, this was strange. She was known to be a heavy smoker. If she had simply decided to leave, why would she leave behind something she regularly used? Again, there was no clear answer. The telephone. Then there was the telephone. When friends and family were inside the house, the phone rang. And it wasn't just one strange call. There were several obscene calls made to the house. The identity of the caller was never established. Were they nothing more than prank calls? Or was someone deliberately trying to disturb the people searching for the missing women? Investigators also became interested in a message that had been left on the answering machine. A message that could have been important, but that message was accidentally erased. Think about that. 3 people had disappeared. The house contained almost no obvious evidence, and there may have been a message that could have provided a clue, but it was gone. Whatever had been recorded on that tape could never be recovered. The investigation begins. Investigators began questioning everyone connected to the 3 women. Family members, friends, people who had been with Suzanne and Stacy during graduation celebrations. The most important question was simple. When was the last time you saw them? Investigators were able to establish a rough timeline. Suzanne and Stacy had spent the night celebrating their graduation. Later, they returned to Cheryl's home. And sometime between approximately 2:15 a.m. and 7:30 a.m., The three women disappeared. That narrow window became one of the most important parts of the investigation. 5 hours and 15 minutes. Somewhere inside that window, something happened. But what? The problem with the crime scene. There was another major problem. The house had not been immediately secured as a crime scene. Before investigators could fully process it, friends and family members had already entered the home. Things had been moved. People had walked through the rooms, and that created a serious possibility. If there had been fingerprints, hair, footprints, or another small piece of evidence, some of it may have been disturbed or lost before investigators could document it. The investigation was now dealing with a disappearance and a crime scene that may never have been completely preserved. The first leads. As investigators continued looking into the lives of the three women, they began examining the people around them: friends, former relationships, acquaintances, and anyone who might have had a reason to approach the house that night. Several people were questioned, but no one could be definitively identified as responsible. There was no single piece of evidence that could answer the biggest question: who took them? A mysterious phone call. Then, months after the disappearance, the case took another strange turn. The story of the Springfield Three had reached television, and someone called. A man claimed to have information about the disappearance. Information that, if true, could have changed everything. This might have been the call investigators had been waiting for. But when a television employee attempted to connect the caller with police, the man suddenly ended the conversation. The call was over. The man was never identified, and whatever information he claimed to have was never fully revealed. Now the investigation had become more than a search for three missing women. It had become a search for someone who might know what happened to them, someone who may have seen something, someone who may have heard something, or someone who may have known much more than they were willing to admit. And that changed the central question. It was no longer simply, what happened to the Springfield Three? The question became, who knows what happened, and why are they still silent? But this was only the beginning, because as the investigation continued, more names would enter the case, more strange leads would appear, and eventually, someone would make a claim about knowing what happened to Cheryl Levitt, Suzanne Streeter, and Stacy McCall. But was that person telling the truth? Or was it just another false lead in one of America's most mysterious missing person cases? Find out in Part 3.